this week's episode, we promised you a demonstration of the Philosopher's Game, and we are all set up here to show you how the game works. The game is a variation of chess, and if you check the link below, or it might be here on the screen somewhere, you can watch part 1 of the Philosopher's Game, where I went over the history behind this game and how it relates to William Shakespeare, and specifically his play, The Tempest. But for now, I'm going to show you how to play it. Now, this game is an incredibly complicated game. It has a lot of math, and not just like regular math, but like geometric, arithmetic, and harmonium, I think I'm saying that correctly, math, which in complete honesty, I don't even know how to calculate that. But there are pages and pages of rules and variations, and what we're going to show you how to play today is the most basic way that you can play this game, and that's useful if you're like us, playing it for the first time, or you're introducing this to a class where you want to play it because it's related to Shakespeare, but you maybe don't want to go into calculus to have to do it. So the way you start out is by pushing 2 chessboards together. We've done that here on the board, and as you can see, they don't really match up. So probably your best bet would get to get a big piece of cardboard where you can do 16 squares down one side and 8 squares across, and just color it in like a grid so it looks like a chessboard, but it is the size of 2 chessboards put together. For our demonstration purposes here today, we're going to show you how it works on this makeshift version, but making a homemade version out of the big sheet of cardboard is a great idea. So you start out by cutting out your pieces. I tried to find this game online and I couldn't find it. So instead, we're going to draw out the pieces. We've got to cut out our pieces and set them up on the board setup. Both a diagram for the pieces and the guide for how to set them up on your chessboard are part of the printable download that you can get by signing up for that Shakespeare Girl newsletter at the link below this video. The pieces are different from regular chess, and you have squares, triangles, and they are outlined, and circles, and they're outlined in the shape of a pyramid on either side of the board. So each player has their own pyramid. I read 2 different versions of the Philosopher's Game, one of which said that the king playing piece was either a square like the other squares on the board, but allowed to move like the queen in standard chess, or the other version of the rule actually had the king being a stack of so many squares, so many circles, and so many triangles, so that the king was actually worth multiple levels of points, and as it played around the board and got into altercations with the other pieces on the board, it lost some of that value until the king was down to nothing or it got conquered. That, to me, is just 2 different variations. For today's game, we're going to play like the king is just another square on the board that has extra privileges. It can move differently than the other pieces on the board. So the first shape that you have is a circle. Now, each player has 24 pieces. They can be any color, but you don't want them to be the same color. So your player and your opponent's player, you both can pick a color, but you can't pick the same color. One team is evens and one team is odds, and that matters because each of your playing pieces is given a number, and that's where the math comes in, because the way that you attack and conquer the other pieces on the board to win the game is through solving math problems. But first, let me tell you what the pieces are. So each person has 24 pieces. There's 8 round pieces, 8 triangle pieces, and then 7 squares plus the king in our version is also going to be a square. The rounds can move diagonally in any direction. The triangles jump 3 spaces, but they can't move diagonally. So, and when they want to conquer another piece, they can move diagonally, like 2 up and 1 to the left or right, just like a knight in standard chess. But that's only if they are challenging the other player. The squares move 4 spaces, so they can move in any direction, north, south, east, or west, but they can't move diagonally, and they can move up to 4 spaces on their turn. The king can move just like a queen in standard chess. He can go any direction he wants to and for as far as he wants to, except He can go in any direction he wants to, but unlike the queen in standard chess, he can only move 4 spaces at a time, and that's a maximum. He can move less than that. So now, you'll notice I've been saying that one team's players challenge the other team's players. Well, that's because they don't land on the same space and remove the player like you would in standard chess. Instead, you have one piece that is so many spaces away from another piece. Then it can challenge that other piece, and if it can beat it through a math problem, then the piece with the larger answer wins, and the other person has to be removed. So there are 4 math problems that we're going to use in today's version of the Philosopher's Game. To win the game, the object is to conquer all of the pieces of the other person's pyramid. And again, the pyramid is the arrangement of your shapes on the board at the beginning of the game. So while there are many ways to win at the Philosopher's Game, because there are many math problems to play, as far as variations of how to play this game, you can go very, very deep with it. But for today's version, if you've conquered all of your opponent's pieces, you win the game. The second of 4 ways to challenge an opponent's piece is called an ambuscade. And that is if you have 2 pieces, an enemy piece, and then your piece, and an enemy piece in the middle, like a sandwich, then the one in the middle has to be removed. So you've surrounded it on 2 sides, and it has to be removed. A siege is if you surround a piece on all sides. So if you have surrounded the piece on all sides, then that piece has to be removed. And then there is a meeting. If you meet up with a piece from the other playing field that has the same value as your piece, then that piece gets removed. Now, remember, meeting up has to do, or being able to challenge the other player has to do with your piece's movement on the board, because you remember at the beginning when I said a round piece can move diagonally, that means it challenges diagonally. So if you're sitting on one space on the board and you challenge another person's piece, then you have to challenge diagonally as well. That's different for the triangles, because while the triangles jump 3 in any direction except diagonally, to challenge, they challenge in an L shape. So you move your pieces around the board on your turn, and when you're in position to challenge, you challenge through one of these 4 math problems. If you win, meaning that either that through one of the 4 ways that I just told you how to win, then the other player has to remove their piece from the board, and play continues until one of you has done that to all of the pieces on the other team. Now, as you might imagine, that takes an absolute ton of time. So the Philosopher's Game instructions also said that an alternative version of the game would be to set a time limit and say the person who defeats the most pieces in a set amount of time wins the game. That is also the version that we're going to play today. First setup we're going to show you is how to do an assault with a triangle piece. If you're on the orange team, this is how to assault on your turn with a triangle.
We have a 6 and a 9. 6 times 3 is 18. 18 is larger than 9, so the 9 has to be removed.
Now we're going to use the blue players to show you an ambuscade. Ambuscade is when you have 2 of your pieces are attacking a 3rd piece. And if the sum of your 2 pieces is greater than the value of the 3rd piece, then you win and the 3rd piece has to be removed.
Here we have a 5 and a 3. 5 plus 3 equals 8. So they are challenging the 8 that is located between them, and the 8 has to be removed.
Siege is pretty straightforward, but difficult to accomplish during play, and that is when a single player is surrounded on all sides by the opposing team. If that occurs, the player that gets surrounded is removed from the board, and I'll show you what that looks like.
Here we have an orange 6 that is already surrounded on 3 sides by blue numbers. On its turn, the blue triangle is going to move 3 spaces because that's how many spaces triangles can go. It is now causing the orange piece to be surrounded on all sides, and so the 6 has to be removed.
Last kind of attack you can do in this version of the Philosopher's Game is called a meeting. And the way that works is if using your attack moves, like for the triangle, it its regular moves is one way and its attack move is another way. So using the piece's attack motion, if it was possible for it to land on a space that is already occupied by a piece of the same value on its turn, then the piece whose turn it is causes the other team's piece to have to leave the board. And I'll show you what that looks like.
16 orange is in attack position against the 16 blue because they're the same value, and orange circles can attack diagonally. So it can attack the 16 blue and the blue has to leave the board. The 16 blue is also in attack position if it's its turn because triangles attack 1, 2, 3. So the 16 blue attacks the 16 orange and the orange has to leave the board. Once you figure out all of the moves and you've got your pieces cut out, then you set up your 2 chessboards and start to play. Take some trial and error at first to get used to it, but then you're well on your way and it's a pretty fun game. It's a 2-player game, but as you can see, siblings can get in on the act as well.
The boys are playing the Philosopher's Game, and that's how to play it. If it seems complicated, that's because it is. It is a highly complicated version of chess that was hugely popular in the 17th century or the early 17th century. What's really cool about this game is, like a lot of things from William Shakespeare's lifetime, it was popular during his lifetime. Right after Shakespeare died, this game would actually fall into disuse and would not be played again until the 19th and 20th centuries, when historians actually brought it back to life and wanted to learn how to play it because of its historic value. But for William Shakespeare and his contemporaries, this was a popular game played very often and profusely during his lifetime. So it makes complete sense that he would have referred to it and even punned on it in several of his plays. I hope you enjoyed learning how to play with us today. If you play this game at home, let us know what you think about it. Comment below. Please hit like and subscribe to the channel. We'll be here next Saturday with even more Shakespeare. That's it for this week. I'm Cassie Cash, that Shakespeare girl, and I hope you learned something new about the Bard. See you next week. Bye-bye.